Hi, I'm Brianne,
And I'm Jax.
and we have a special guest today, our school counselor, Miss Courtney. How often would you say you get asked for help from
So that
kids?
would be daily. However, a lot of my position is scheduled out. So um, when I do have my caseload of students that I meet with, we usually try to schedule out meetings or sessions in advance. However, throughout any given day, I can get referrals from teachers, counselors, administration, campus safety, anyone really. And then also students can come to me directly or reach out to me directly to ask for support as well.
What's something you usually see when people come and ask for you for help?
So a lot of times I'm meeting with students about their mental health and some things they're struggling with, whether that's personally, maybe some things going on at home, maybe school is overwhelming. So it's can be a variety of things. Sometimes it's just academic support as well. But within that is a lot of trauma that maybe they're going through, anxiety, depression. And really just needing help with strategies on how to cope or how to just deal with the things that they're going through.
What made you want to become a school social worker?
So I did not know I wanted to be a school social worker for a long time. But when I was in graduate school, getting my master's in social work, I was able to have a couple different internship experiences. And I knew I wanted to help people, but through those experiences and internships, I was able to narrow it down to I want to help kids. And then I had an internship actually working for this school district as an intern. And I fell in love with the school social work position and all that it entails.
What type of advice would you give to the different kids that are afraid to come and ask for help about how they're doing mentally?
It's a great question. I think that there is a really big negative stigma on mental health, whether that's, from a generational thing, a cultural thing. Sometimes it's, comes from their family or just the society around us and what's appropriate or unacceptable or all those things. I would recommend that if they do feel like they need help, to just give it a try. I think a lot of times students think that asking for help is going to be therapy, or that there's something wrong with them, or that, we're going to throw them on medication, or, all these extreme kind of responses. However, everybody needs support sometimes. Mental health is something that everybody has, and taking care of your mental health is so important, that just taking that first step to say, I need help, and trying to see with the resources that we have available, if it's something that may be helpful, is a good first step to take.
What are some ways you would say would help with people? Like if somebody comes to you asking for different coping ways, what are some things you would recommend for them?
It definitely depends on what they're needing help coping with, but strategies for that range from anxiety reduction techniques, social skills building, anger management, just trauma-based coping skills. And those can range anywhere from just having some breathing exercises to what we call a grounding technique, or just really, it's really kind of dependent on the kind of support or help that they're needing.
So can you show us or tell us how to do any of those techniques, like the grounding technique? That one sounded pretty interesting.
Sure, yeah, the grounding techniques, There's a number of ways you can do the grounding technique, but one of my favorites is because I think it's easy to remember and it's something that you can do wherever you're at. If you know your five senses, you know your taste, smell, what you hear, what you can feel or touch, those sorts of things. Then when you're in a moment where you're kind of fixated on something or maybe you're starting to feel some anxiety, grounding is really all about kind of bringing your mind off of whatever you're thinking about, and kind of grounding you in that moment and bringing you back to the present moment to remind you that you're okay, and that just kind of helps you to not fixate on whatever that thought is in the moment. So grounding is simply, and there's no right or wrong on how you do it, but kind of going through your senses and saying, okay, what are three things I can see right now? I can see this table, I can see this computer, I can see this microphone, right? Moving on to what are three things I can hear right now? I can hear those students talking, I can hear the muffle in here, I can hear, my chair moving around. What are three things that I can feel right now? And so as you start to go through each of those senses, your mind and your brain kind of naturally unfixates on whatever had your emotions kind of riled up in that moment. We can't really think fully on two things at the same time. I know we think we can. We think we're really good multitaskers, but we're not. So it kind of naturally just brings you back to the present moment, kind of grounds you, and just reminds you that you're safe and you're present.
So, what's the difference between a social worker and a counselor?
So in schools, a counselor is primarily for your academics. Yes, you can still talk to your counselors if you feel comfortable with them. They're great people and they're here as a resource. However, their primary function is your class schedules or talking about post-high school plans, any kind of academic plan you might be on, getting you set up for your schedules, talking about credits, those sorts of things. A school social worker is more about the social emotional part or the mental health part, and being an extra kind of counseling support resource on campus.
So how long have you been a social worker here?
This is my 5th year as a school social worker here.
Did you do any other type of social working jobs like at East Campus or?
Yeah, so actually when I first started 5 years ago, I was the only school social worker in the district. So I would go to Sierra Pacific, Hanford High, Hanford West, and also EFJ, our continuation high school, and CDS, which is our community day school. More recently, I want to say 3 years ago now, they added on 3 more school social workers, which allowed us to each have our own site that we're at all the time. So now I am just on this campus.
So what does your daily work life consist of? What does it look like?
Well, no 2 days are the same. Sometimes I come in with a plan. I think I'm going to meet with these students, have these meetings, and then life happens. And, things that come up in our lives aren't always predictable. So some days that plan gets kind of blown up, and I might have more students that come and request to meet with me. So that kind of rearranges my schedule, or I might have more referrals that day or little crises that pop up. So a typical day, there's no really typical day, but what my days consist of is a lot of one-on-one counseling. Sometimes I can do group counseling as well, if we're seeing a similar issue play out, that I can kind of work with a few students at a time to kind of, work through things. I'm a part of a lot of team meetings, all based on student support, as well as meetings for our special education population. I work with our foster and our homeless student population as well. And then we have meetings called 504 plans and IEP plans and SSTs. I know that's a bunch of acronyms, but lots of meetings. And yeah, I think that's typically mostly what my days consist of.
How does it feel knowing what these students or anyone that you're talking to is going through? What does it do to you and your mental health?
So it can be hard. It can be really it's a different kind of, it's like a mental and kind of emotional exhaustion sometimes, and that's where that self-care comes into place, and that's something that I work with my students on as well, as having making sure they're taking care of themselves and engaging in things that they enjoy and can help them de-stress. And so that's something that I have to work into my life as well, so that I can de-stress and kind of, a lot of the things I hear I take home with me, or I can't just forget them at the end of the day. However, I will say that, when something really exciting happens, or I see a student who is doing really well after maybe they weren't doing so well, or just any kind of little success is kind of makes it all better. It kind of reminds me my purpose and why I chose this, and what I'm here for really, and that's very helpful as well.
If it's all right to ask, have you suffered from depression or anxiety or anything?
Yeah. I actually have. Mine was mostly sports related. When I was younger, I was very serious about basketball. I actually played in college. And so we were actually required to see a sports psychologist at that time, because it's very mental, when something's a big part of your life and it doesn't always go well, or, and it's part of how you define yourself, that can take a big mental toll. I also got really hurt playing basketball twice, to where I had to sit out for a season because I had to have surgery and all that stuff. And so that was always a really difficult time too, because it took away a big part of who I was and what I did every day. And so, most of my struggles with depression and anxiety came from being an athlete and kind of all that came with that.
If it's all right to ask, well, do you have any like a certain quote that you tell kids a lot to, like, maybe inspire them or help them get through the day that?
I use a lot of things, so I'm trying to think of one in particular. I think one of my favorite quotes is that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, which is not always so, mental health focused necessarily, but it's something that, when we're worried about trying something new, or just kind of have an anxiety about, doing something in general, it's a good reminder that, if you don't try, you're never going to know what's possible, or, you're not going to get the outcome if you're never taking chances or trying. And so I don't know that that's a great one to think off the top of my head, but that's always just a quote that sticks out for me.
You also said you do group counseling. What is that like? What do you guys do in that?
So it depends on what type of group I'm running. But if I'm meeting with a bunch of kids and I start to see kind of the same concerns or issues arise, we have curriculum for different types of group. So, for instance, we have an anger management group that I've run before. So, if I see that anger's a big problem and we need to work on managing that, or strategies to deal with our anger in a healthier way. Social skills, so sometimes when students have a little bit more of a difficult time making friends, or talking to their teachers effectively or their parents effectively, and just social skills needs to be worked on a little bit. I've done a social skills group before. A grief group, those are pretty tough, but if we're seeing a lot of loss or people kind of grieving or going through something difficult, sometimes a group in that setting can be more effective and more helpful, because it's a sense of community and feeling like you're not alone, and kind of going through it with other people who are having some similar feelings and things going on. So those are some examples of some groups that I've run before, and can be done depending on what kinds of students I'm meeting with.
Was there a spike in your work life after the pandemic?
Yes, absolutely. Students coming back, and I don't even think it's post-COVID yet. We're still kind of, dealing with this stuff. But yes, I would say this year there has been a huge increase in grief. Lots of loss has happened. Anxiety, students who were kind of isolated in the last year and a half because of distance learning and school just not being the same. And, that it's hard to come back and be around a lot of people, or to kind of start to be social again, or even with school stress too. School looked a lot different last year. And now it's getting used to 7 classes every day, 50 minutes, and so that has been a big adjustment for students as well. So the stress and being overwhelmed, learning, organizational skills or time management, that sort of stuff has created, kind of a spike in mental health concerns as well. So yes, that is definitely an increase this year, and I think it will continue to be an increase. We'll feel the effects of this for years to come. So.
Can you tell us where your room is at? That way, if kids feel like they need to talk to you, they know.
Absolutely, yes. So it's kind of hard to explain, of course. So there is a classroom. There's 511 and there's 512. My office is sandwiched right in between those. We call it 511A, but there is no number on it, but there is my nameplate on the outside, which just says my full name and that I'm the school social worker here. So any students who are interested in maybe coming to talk to me a little bit more about what support looks like, or if you or someone may be struggling with something, please either come to myself or your counselor, or even a teacher. Anyone on this campus knows what supports are available, and can refer you to me or someone that may be helpful.
Well, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much, Miss Courtney, for having this interview with us and being so informational. We might do another interview here and there, if that's good with you.
Yes, I'd love to come back.
We'll hopefully be able to put her email somewhere in the video and the podcast, so make sure to check that out. We also have a quiz that you can take where it asks about your name, your age, and if you would like to share your story, and we can share it on our podcast, and maybe there's another person out there that has another story just like yours. So thanks for listening, and hopefully we see you next time.